What's up, everybody? Julian Farah here from the Photos Farah YouTube channel. Welcome back for another lens review. This lens review has been a long time coming. I've been off the grid for a while, and this is my second review in over a year. And I figured I would take the time to do a review on one of my one of my most favorite lenses, I would say, and a lens that flies under the radar far too often, in my opinion. And that is the Canon EF-M 32 f1.4 prime series lens for the Canon M mount cameras. All that coming right up. So just a little bit of history for you guys about the Canon M line. The Canon M series cameras were released in around fall of 2012 when Canon released the first EOS M camera, and at that point some of the competitors already had mirrorless sized APS-C style cameras, so they were a little bit late to the game. However, they did get into the market with the camera, and at that time when they released the EOS M, shortly after they released the EF-M 22 f2 pancake standard prime lens. So the 22mm APS-C lens basically equaled a 35mm full frame equivalent. And that was great for, well, I would say a reasonable amount of time. But some of the M users started feeling as if maybe Canon had forgotten about the M line. Canon had other lenses available for their full frame formats. They had a standard 50mm STM lens for a long time on their full frame cameras. Even on their Rebel series cameras, smaller crop cameras, they had 50mm options. But the M users never really got a 50mm full frame equivalent lens, prime series lens, and they've been waiting for a very long time. That changed. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of an unboxing. I've had the lens for about 2 years almost this fall, but I figured I would go ahead and unbox it for you just to show you what comes in the packaging. So if we open up the lens over here, we got our standard instructions. We have some cardboard and some very cheap plasticky feeling, I don't even call this foam protecting cover layer. I don't know which one to call it. And that's it. We don't have a lens hood. We don't have a lens pouch. We have our standard lens cap and we have our rear caps. Canon lens hoods cost probably $3 to make. I don't know why you didn't go ahead and ship people a lens hood with this lens. I don't understand it. Anyway, that's what comes in the box. It's pretty basic. Nothing else. So, moving forward, talking about the build quality of the lens, build quality and ergonomics and handling, I would say, of the lens. The lens is built very well. There isn't any weather sealing on this lens, and it doesn't have an image stabilizer. If you want to use an image stabilizer, you have to use the in-camera image stabilization system that comes on some of the Canon M line, and that's only for video. They haven't yet released the camera with in-body stabilization up to this point. They're saying possibly on the M6 Mark II this fall that, the M5 Mark II, that it might have it. In terms of build quality, the lens is very solid. There isn't any creaking. There isn't any plasticky moving parts. I mean, it's made of mostly polycarbonate plastic, but it doesn't squeak. It's quite rigid. It's much more solid than some of the kit lenses that come with the M series cameras, such as the 1545 STM and the discontinued 1855. I would say it's even more solid than the telephoto 18150, the ultra-wide to telephoto M lens. The lens weighs an astonishingly low 235 grams. That's actually less than most of the competition. That even counts Micro Four Thirds cameras. It has a 43mm filter. It's, I would say, if you're looking at physically speaking, it's a very small lens. I mean, it's actually tiny. Even when you compare this to a small lens, let's say like the RF35 for Canon's full frame EOS R system, the M lens is still significantly smaller overall. And this is already a very small lens, the 35. So suffice to say, it's a small lens. Speaking of that, it was released in September of 2018. So they made the announcement, I think it was roughly middle of 2017, and M users had some final glimmer of hope that they were going to finally get a lens, a fast 50 prime. This equates to a 51.2 millimeter full frame equivalent. The aperture opens up from f1.4 all the way to f16. So it's a very fast lens. It's capable of producing some really nice out of focus backgrounds. We're going to see that in the image quality section a little bit later. It's mostly made of polycarbonate plastic, and it is made in Malaysia. Unfortunately, if this lens had been made in Japan, it probably would have costed significantly more. Speaking of price, it comes in retailing at $629.95 Canadian plus tax. And although for some that might seem quite expensive, in relative terms, for what you're getting in this lens, it's actually a bargain for the overall performance that this lens gives you. I mean, it's really that impressive. It performs admirably overall. We're going to take a look at that a little bit after. It has an STM motor, so it's this Canon stepping motor, so it's ideal for both photo and video, meaning it's a silent video motor. I tested it on some video footage, which I'll show you a little bit later, and it performed greatly. I had no complaints about that. It's got 7 diaphragm blades, and design basically consists of 14 elements in 8 groups, speaking of the optical design. Let's go on to the build quality. I talked about that. Let's speak a little bit about the autofocus. Okay, well, the autofocus, guys, on my Canon M5, which is the first Canon M camera to have the dual pixel autofocus technology, the M camera, it performed wonderfully. I didn't have any, I wouldn't say any real hunting. Maybe sometimes in lower light it would sort of hunt a little bit, but overall it performed flawlessly. I had no problems with autofocus. It was sharp and precise from frame to frame. Even during video, as you can see on the screen, I did some video autofocus testing to show you in regular good light conditions and a little bit lower light conditions to show you that in the lower light it does hunt a little bit, but I wouldn't say it's anything that would ruin an image or ruin your video. It's not really that slow. In terms of actual focusing precision, it was sharp for me from frame to frame, edge to edge of the frame on the M5. I even had the chance to quickly test it on the Canon M6 Mark II, and it also performed admirably. It was even significantly faster than on my M5, which is surprising because the lens already focused quite quickly. In terms of lens noise or autofocus noise, I didn't hear any. I tried to do a test on the microphone before, but it wasn't really giving me any sounds because it's literally silent. In terms of autofocus, in terms of low focus and close focus distance, it doesn't give you macro capabilities. Obviously, it's not a macro size lens, but it does give you a 0.25 macro capability, which is still quite close. It does focus down to 23 centimeters, which is still very, very good. If you look on some comparisons, basically on the internet, you'll see that it performs really well for a 50 millimeter lens. It isn't entirely macro, like I said, but it'll still get you some really nice, creamy out of focus backgrounds. And you always have the option of adding aftermarket extension tubes if you wanted to increase the magnification of the EF-M 32. Just wanted to do a brief mention of all the competition. We're speaking that this lens is in a realm against other competitors such as the Fujifilm 35 1.4, Sony has their 35 1.8, and Olympus has their 25, Mzuiko 25 1.2. In terms of where this lens is priced, it's actually very, very competitive because it's cheaper than everything, I believe, except the Sony. I think the Sony these days is retailing at around $589, but it's an f1.8 lens, so you are losing that third stop of light. The Olympus Micro Four Thirds lens is an astronomical, I think, $1,200 or $1,300. It's a 1.2 lens in Micro Four Thirds category, but obviously build quality and weather resistance is on a whole other level from all of these lenses. The Olympus is built far superior to any of these lenses that we're comparing. So as I was saying in terms of autofocus, some people opt even to use the Canon EF-35 f2.IS macro lens from the full frame counterpart on the M camera, and that gives you macro capability and it gives you image stabilization. So that's also another viable option that you can use, but it does increase the overall size because the camera becomes larger. You need an adapter to convert your M mount to the EF mount. So the whole package will be much larger than what you're getting over here. Moving on into vignetting and lens distortions and chromatic aberrations. The lens does exhibit a little bit of vignetting wide open at 1.4. That slowly goes away at f2. And by 2.8, you can see that it's practically gone. I don't mind the 1.4 vignetting. I find that using vignetting in a lens attributes a natural artistic feature of the lens, and I often use that to push the viewer's eye towards what's important. So I really don't mind natural vignetting, and it's not anything that can't be corrected within post-processing software. In terms of chromatic aberrations, the lens does exhibit some longitudinal chromatic aberration. Take a look at these quick shots right now. You're going to take a look that you can see some little purple fringing and some purple little aberrations at 1.4. They get a little bit better at at f2, and by 2.8 we can well say that they're gone completely. So it's strong. I wasn't really able to produce any linear chromatic aberration, actually called lateral chromatic aberration. I don't really have the testing tools at this point to do that, but it's very slim. This lens performs admirably at 1.4. In terms of flaring, the lens does flare a little bit, but because it has Canon's super spectral coating, which helps with flaring, it flares to a certain extent. It's not heavy flaring by any means, or anything that would ruin an image or a video. Take a look on the screen right now. I did a short video to show you guys some of the flaring that occurs in direct beaming sunlight. So yeah, you're going to see that there is a little bit of flaring. There is a little bit of purple flaring there, but I wouldn't say that it's anything that could ruin your image at all. So I hope that helps. Moving on to still performance image quality. Before we get into some of the photos, I'm going to show you the still performance, the image quality that we have on the brick wall. But before we talk about that, in terms of barrel distortion, the lens barely exhibits any barrel distortion. It's nothing that's visible in real life, and it's nothing that you're going to be able to see with the naked eye. You bring this into Photoshop and start playing around with it, yeah, you're probably going to see a little bit. But let's move into the still image quality and take a look. So if we take a look over here at 1.4, zoomed out, we're going to zoom into roughly, let's just say 100% crop. So now we're at 100% crop at 1.4 in the center, and you're going to see the center performance is literally incredible. This is wide open at 100% crop, and it's very sharp, very sharp. Moving up to the corner at 1.4, corner performance is still acceptably sharp. I wouldn't say it's pin sharp like the center, but it's definitely acceptably sharp in the corners. Going into f2, center, 100% zoom. This is f2, center performance. This is razor sharp, 100% crop. No problems here at all. Moving up to the corner at f2. There's a nice improvement in the sharpness at f2 in the corners of this lens. Here you go. So f2, much better. Moving on to 2.8, center sharpness. Spot on. Nothing to mention over here. Corner sharpness. f2.8. Now you can see that it's razor sharp from edge to edge of frame. The same thing happens at 5.6 where there's little improvement. The center is razor sharp. This is 100% crop. We go into the corner, razor sharp. Very little improvement. And then we finalize at f8, center performance, razor sharp. And we go into the center and we don't really see much improvement. Even at 200%, we are pin sharp here. So yeah, that gives you an idea of the performance and the still image quality of the lens. Speaking of overall image quality now, this lens is a bargain. This is why you buy this lens, guys. The optics are superb. It's sharp right from the frame at 1.4 with a small improvement in contrast and corner sharpness at 2. From f2 all the way till I would say f11 before any diffraction kicks in, the lens is razor sharp. The lens blew me away. There's a reason that I use this lens, and there's a reason why I keep my full frame cameras at home. I have 2 full frame camera bodies and a lot of L glass in my kit, and I choose willingly to always keep those cameras at home because this lens is so sharp. It performs admirably. It's actually a bargain at this price. There have been tests on other websites such as the Digital Picture putting this lens up for image comparison's sake to the mighty 200 f2. That's an $8,000 lens, and they're putting still image quality neck and neck. And the gentleman who wrote the article said he almost couldn't tell a perceivable difference. That speaks a lot. I personally have put this lens up to the mighty 35 Mark II, the EF-35 Mark II. And with the Canon 35 Mark II on my M body, I took some shots after with the 32. I had a really hard time telling any perceivable difference. Would the 35 perform better on the full frame counterpart? Probably. It'd probably give you a little bit better image quality. Would it give you 3 times the image quality? Not in my books, not even close. So as you can see, the images are fantastic. The micro contrast of this lens, for me, is almost L-grade quality. The close focusing distance, the bokeh is not nervous at all. It gives you beautiful subject separation, beautiful backgrounds. You can shoot landscapes, you can shoot portraits. It's a wonderful street lens due to the fast aperture and the fact that the form is so small. You can look at this in my hand, how small the whole package is. I have an L bracket on my M camera and the whole package is still so small. It's unbelievable. I mean, if you take a look at one lens from a full frame camera, the 100L, and you take a look at the whole package versus the camera and the lens of the M5, there's a massive difference in size. There's a reason why people use these cameras, and I really hope that Canon doesn't stop fabricating the M cameras. There was a fear that that they would stop producing M cameras, but I don't think that's going to happen. Now that Sigma has a whole trio of lenses that they've released from the 16 to the 30 to the 56, I don't see the M system going anywhere. If we take a look at the actual type of bokeh, you're going to see the bokeh balls, if you look on the screen, are a little bit of cat-eye shape. So they're not entirely circular. That bothers some people. I wasn't entirely impressed with that. Probably one of the negative aspects of the lens. I would have liked a more circular style bokeh, the bokeh balls, but that's okay. I mean, there's obviously a slight trade-off for the price. That brings us to our conclusion. For me, this is a must-own lens if you own an M system. This literally is the reason why you should buy an M camera, for this lens. I implore people to try and tell any difference between this and, let's say, the 35 Mark II on the full frame. It's going to be very hard for you. It's small, it's a very light lens, it's a take everywhere lens. The image quality is fantastic. It almost gives you near macro capabilities, which is another fantastic capability. It's superb optics and it favors very well with the competition. It's as sharp as all the competition. That includes the Fuji lenses, the Sony lenses, the Nikon lenses, the Olympus lenses. I would say it even outperforms some of those lenses for cheaper. That's how good the EF-M 32 is, and I think it's been very clear with the images I've shown you on the screen. It makes me leave my full frame camera at home. Some cons. There's no weather sealing. That's a big, big bummer for a lot of people who shoot in the street, even for myself. I would have preferred having weather sealing in my camera. There is no image stabilization. It's not the end of the world for some people, but some people, unfortunately, would like to have weather resistance. Speaking of $629, that might still be too expensive for some people when you can get some cheaper kit lenses such as the EF-M 22 Prime for around $250. It's hard to suggest spending almost $700 on one focal length. But if you like the 50mm focal length, you want a fast lens that can do pretty much anything, this is probably your best bet. Another con, I don't understand why Canon chose not to ship a lens hood with this lens at $700. I frankly don't understand it at all. Canon, are you listening? I don't understand it. And lastly, there's similar performance for a little bit less. Sigma released their EF-M mount 30 1.4 last year. I believe it's around $100 cheaper and offers similar performance. So that could be considered a con for this lens. In my testing, however, the Canon lens was a little bit sharper at the corners and it's overall a smaller lens. So that concludes my review of the Canon EF-M 32. I made it as quick as I possibly can, being as comprehensive as I could. If you guys like this review, feel free to leave a comment below in the section below. I read all my comments. Please feel free to subscribe if you liked my video. Send me messages to ask me what you'd like to have my next video about. What lens would you like me to review? That being said, guys, stay visual, have a great day, and until the next video.